Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to today's workshop on our product innovation series, HR, the road to recovery for tourism roles and opportunities. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, or evening or morning, wherever you may be. And before we get to today's webinar, let me first introduce myself. My name is Pruangkarn. I am the Director of Communications and External Affairs at the Pacific Asia Travel Association, and I will be your host for today. Now, we have a great speaker with us here today to talk about HR and the road to recovery. But before we get to his presentation, I just want to give a quick couple notes regarding Zoom. Many of you are familiar with how to use Zoom, but just as a refresher, please note at the bottom of your browser, there is a chat function and a Q&A function. For the chat, feel free to engage with other participants, say hello, where you're from, your thoughts on the presentation. However, if you have any questions about the presentation, please submit them in the Q&A as noted on your screen. Please do not submit any questions using the chat function, as it's difficult to toggle back between the Q&A and the chat during the Q&A portion of today's webinar. And with that, is all my notes, and we've come to the presentation itself. And with that, I would like to welcome the founder and CEO of ACI HR Solutions, Mr. Andrew Chan. Andrew, hello.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me. Now, bear with me while I just quickly share my screen. Okay, so in my webinar, I'm just going to talk a little bit about obviously COVID's impact to the travel and hospitality sector. And this is based off research that we did a little bit earlier in the year. So disclosure, some of these statistics are a few months old, but I certainly think that they still are very much relevant and they apply. So we're going to be a little bit statistic heavy, and I'll try and answer as much as I can, particularly towards the Q&A section if you do have questions around some of these numbers. I am covering myself here. Okay, so COVID has obviously had a huge impact on the tourism sector. So from the numbers that we've seen in a survey that we did, it affected almost 3/4 of the entire travel industry, particularly here in Asia Pacific. So we saw almost 1/4 of the industry was made redundant, and at least 50% of the industry had some form of pay cuts during this period as well. Now, from our research and data, that's pretty much across the board. So some countries, may have higher numbers, some may have lower numbers, but these are the statistics and research that we've done across the Asia Pacific region. Of those that had their salary cut or affected, 36% of those were cut between 25% to 50%. And 28% experienced pay cuts of 50% or higher. From what we've seen, salaries have started, I guess, going back to normal, but there are certainly still a fragment of the people out there that are still having some sort of pay cuts at the moment or are still actually furloughed. We have unemployment rate for the travel and hospitality sector at the moment, just under 10% across Asia Pacific region. And again, depending on where you're based and where you are, those numbers could be higher or lower as well. But across the Asia Pacific region, on a travel and tourism sector, we're still seeing about 10% unemployment, just under 10% unemployment. One of the most alarming things that I've seen, particularly in what we do as a HR and recruitment company, is that we've seen a lot of people leave the industry or lose confidence in the industry. So about 1/5 of the industry have actually lost confidence in the industry and have actually left the industry. The top industry that they now find themselves in or pursuing are the technology sector, the healthcare sector, and the education sector. And so these are the people that have been working in the industry, whether it's for a number of years or new entrants that were about to come into the industry and no longer coming into the travel and tourism sector. And that's probably one of the biggest concerns. So for HR or hiring managers that's out there, think about this. Graduates that were in hospitality school or tourism degrees in 2020 came into the market during COVID. So likelihood is they weren't getting a job or they weren't starting their career in travel and tourism sector. Same as 2021. So that's 2 years of graduates that we've lost as an industry to COVID. 2022 is around the corner, new batch of graduates happening soon. So my hope is that we don't lose 3 years of potential workers in the travel and tourism sector, because that's going to have a snowball and roll-on effect down the track for us as an industry. So already, even before COVID, we were having a hard time and challenging time to attracting talent. So we're already in a talent short market. So here we are now where we stand at the precipice of I guess, a recovery. 1/5 of the industry that was working in the travel and tourism space gone. 2, potentially 3 years of graduates that would have hit the job market also gone. So that's quite a lot of talents and brain drain that we're going to be losing or have lost in the tourism space. So that's going to be one area that's going to be a concern and that we need to look out for. We asked, so we surveyed travel managers, event planners, and travel personnel about what their thoughts were in terms of how we're going to recover from COVID, or what they're going to be seeing post-COVID. And here's some of their answers. Which industries will be the first to travel for the next business events? A overwhelming amount said that they believe or they're seeing the pharmaceutical industries, followed by the finance and insurance sector. So if there's any travel bookers out there or travel companies out there, these are probably going to be the areas that you're going to be targeting in terms of industry as far as business is concerned. Those industries, as they either haven't been affected by COVID, potentially still traveling, or are going to be traveling more post-COVID. We also asked the respondent group that we interviewed when they felt clients was going to start traveling, at least short haul, if not long haul. So short haul, again, we did this survey a little bit earlier on in the year. We interviewed people around April, May. So for these numbers, we still think that they're relevant. We're already starting to see at least some short haul travel that's happening, but the majority still feel that the bulk of travel is going to start happening in Q1 2022, with with a possibility of Q4 in 2021. So that's just around the corner. We're coming towards the end of September now, so Q4, we already, as I said, started seeing some travel that started to happen in Q3 this year, but we still feel, and the majority of the travel experts that we sort of spoke to and survey felt that Q1 is going to be when we're going to start to see a lot more short haul travel taking place. Biggest deciding factors for travel managers and event planners when it comes to planning their mixed business event or conference or MICE event. And these were some of the top responses. And I guess it's no surprise. I mean, the biggest hindrance for most business travel is that quarantine, whether it's 14 days or 21 days. And that's something that I experienced when I flew recently back to Hong Kong in July, 21 days. That's, unless you have real urgent need when it comes to corporate travel or business travel, that's a huge put off, the quarantine part. So there's no surprise that for travel managers, what they're saying is that, look, my people, my clients, they're not going to travel as long as there is a quarantine period. Vaccine, what vaccination rate the country that they're traveling to is also going to play a big part. And factors that's going to impact them is safety, security, and obviously hygiene. So that's all rolled into one. And the flexibility on itineraries, which, I think we've seen that with airlines and hotels. They're offering a little bit more flexibility. So that's probably an easier one to manage. But certainly the top one is that's going to be a factor is the quarantine period. Travel managers, what challenges that they're experiencing right now or even post-COVID. And the top one, no surprise, almost 60% said the ever-changing travel regulations. It's a matter of just keeping your government pages pretty much on every day and just seeing some of the chopping and changing. And even where I'm based here at the moment in Hong Kong, a lot of times it goes from needing quarantine to not needing quarantine. And that quarantine period going from as extreme as 7 days to 21 days. So that's a huge challenge for travel managers, travel bookers, and consultants out there. So that's obviously that's the biggest concern or challenge that they see post-COVID. So that's something to be aware of. Their next one on there is reduced group size. So they feel, travel managers feel that conferences, trade shows, business travel is going to be smaller in numbers, and they're going to have a tighter budget post-COVID as well. So potentially less spend for corporate clients and corporate businesses. In terms of business days and for business events, particularly for short hauls, how many days people will be traveling for business events? Majority 3 days, 2 nights. So again, any travel bookers or any consultants out there, that's probably typically what you're going to see. But even for suppliers, this is probably an area that you could look at if there's hotels or airlines out there. These are typically going to be what your travelers are going to be looking for as they sort of dip their toes back into traveling. The 3 days, 4 days, shorter haul, shorter time traffic, whether it comes to leisure or even business events. So I think people are just going to sort of dip their toes in. And again, this is going to be determined by whether there is a quarantine period or not. So once post-COVID is over and that quarantine period, if it doesn't change, they're going to start dipping their toes into 3-4 day type events. Post-pandemic budgets, when we asked the meetings and incentive bookers out there, these are in US dollars, these are in Singapore dollars. The majority felt that travel spend per person per day was going to be anywhere between $300 to $500. That's the budget that the travel managers and event planners are looking at per person per day. So the recovery for most companies is really going to start and begin with a clear HR strategy. And I think this is where business leaders is really going to have to work closely with HR on how they recover and how they bring their business back, particularly from a talent point of view. And I think human resource is really going to be one of the key parts and key components in executing any sort of recovery plan and whatever business that you're operating. Companies need to ensure that their strategy and philosophy, whether it's a new philosophy post-COVID, is passed down clearly and concisely to their employees. It's going to be a balance between, and it's still going to be a balance between operational efficiencies and your fiscal capabilities. And what I mean by that is, I think the consensus by most HR professionals out there at the moment is that because of COVID, they're cut so close to the bone at the moment that any sort of pickup in business or recovery, they're going to really struggle with from an operational point of view in terms of how they're going to meet those sort of demands. So you can imagine if we open borders tomorrow from a hotel perspective, there just clearly isn't enough staff from a service point of view to actually manage some of the demand that's going to come through. So right now, that's going to be a really real struggle to sort of balance the rehiring. So most of the HR professionals that we're speaking to at the moment are saying, you know what, Andrew, we've got a spreadsheet of new hires that we know that we need, but it's just a matter of finding that timing to actually press that green button to rehire. And that's the biggest challenge for most companies at the moment. It's just finding that right timing to make that hiring. Work from home, obviously. WFH. I've got to make sure. I always have to make sure I say that correctly. It's an acronym that is probably going to be here to stay for a little while. This was a survey that we asked a little bit earlier in the year of employees across Asia Pacific in terms of what they want. So most of the respondents said that they want a flexibility to choose post-COVID. So they want a flexibility to choose whether they come into the office or whether they work from home. And I think that's probably going to be one of the biggest recovery talk points for most organizations as they, again, it's that fiscal capabilities, fiscal responsibilities on taking out office leases or having their people continue to work from home as what they are doing now. And we've all seen the headlines, and we've seen headlines for a lot of big companies, the Facebooks, the Microsofts, the LinkedIn, the Deloittes, who are making big statements out there to say that we're working from home post-COVID forever. We're forever going to go work from home. Now, they're headline grabbing, no doubt, but I always cringe when I see these sort of headlines, and it makes me worried when I see these sort of headlines because I understand it, but I don't. My personal opinion is I don't think it's something that is possible when you're making those sort of big statements from a forever point of view. Work from home has a huge impact or potentially have a huge impact on corporate culture. And that's an area that HR and even as businesses out there that you need to consider is how does work from home or how does your employees working from home impact your corporate culture? Now, it's perfectly fine for the last year or 2 years if you have existing employees that are working from home because of COVID, and that's understandable. It's probably been a government regulation for you to do that anyway. But post-COVID, do you bring the staff back to the office? Now, there's also organizations that have made new hires during COVID, and during that period, those new hires have not actually met their bosses, their colleagues, other employees, or even seen the inside of their office. Now, that's something that as business leaders and HR need to think about is how do you then start to define or impart your company corporate culture to new employees, because your older employees or your existing employees at least have a framework or base on what your corporate culture stands for. And not having a strong corporate culture has many detriments, and there are many hidden costs behind not having a clear corporate identity and corporate culture. And some of those hidden costs are your healthcare actually goes up, cost of disengagement, and lack of loyalty to an organization. I'm going to concentrate, and I can talk on this for a long time, but I'm going to talk a little bit about the cost of disengagement and what that means to an organization when you have disengaged employees. So disengagement to an organization results in 18% lower productivity, 16% lower profitability, 37% lower job growth, 37% high absentees, and 60% more errors. And these were statistics that were conducted by Gallup. Now, I'm not saying that work from home results in disengagement or loyalty, but it's certainly an area to be aware of as an organization so that you don't get caught post-COVID, that you're all of a sudden finding that you have employees that are disengaged from the organization. And that feeds back to your corporate identity and your corporate culture. And touching on very quickly qualities of building positive workplace culture, it boils down to essentially 6 characteristics. Again, I can go on for hours talking about workplace culture, but 6 characteristics to, at least as a business leader or HR, to look out for. And that's, caring, being interested in, and maintaining responsibilities for colleagues as friends. Providing support for one another, include offering kindness, compassion when others are struggling. Avoiding blame and forgiving mistakes. Inspiring one another to work. Emphasizing the meaningfulness of the work that employees are doing, and most importantly, treating one another with respect, gratitude, trust, integrity. So 6 essential characteristics of building good workplace cultures. Now, in terms of opportunities, I was working with a bunch of students just around the type of skills that I felt or we felt post-COVID was going to be in demand, and whether they're skills or whether they're actually roles within the travel and tourism space. And there was 3 key components that we sort of found that was going to be in strong demand. And look, as a travel, tourism and hospitality sector, customer service will always be built around the tourism industry. It's always going to be synonymous with what we do. And I think the customer journey is, and post-COVID, is going to be more important than ever before. And I think interactions with customers is going to evolve. I think there's going to be new customer experience or experiences. I think service will be more customized and individualized, and will be driven by data. That's going to take me to what I'm going to talk about next. But so how do you create connections with your customers and your guests quickly, but meaningfully and deeply? I think relationship with customers don't end once they leave. So it's going to be an ongoing engagement with your customers. So skill sets from a travel tourism point of view, I think, are going to be very much still customer centric, but it's going to be deeper than that. And that's going to be driven by big data or data analytics. So people that are coming into the industry, and that's one thing I've sort of said, is understanding data and being able to analyze data is going to be important as an organization, and also as a skill for individuals coming into the industry. Understanding customer and consumer behavior, being able to anticipate, capture, and then deliver that service. Back to what I was just talking about before, the importance of individualized customer service. So using that data to actually deliver that service to your guests and to your customers. Because having loyal customers has been proven to lead to above average profitability. A loyal customer is going to be worth 10 times their initial purchase. It's going to lower your sales costs because acquiring new customers costs 5 times more than retaining an old one. And being able to understand and increasing your knowledge of your existing customers and your customers will give you more opportunities to actually be more proactive and increase your yield from what you're going to get from your customer base. Reducing customer churn or and increasing your customer retention is a 5% reduction in a 5% customer reduction would increase profit by 25 to 80%. Retaining your current customer base is 3 to 10 times cheaper than acquiring a new customer. Even though an average customer loses between 10 to 30% of customers each year, I guess the magic pill is really just to try and like keep that number to as low as you possibly can, which ultimately would increase your profitability. The last skill set that I see that's going to be important to identify and look for, whether you're hiring new talents or whether you're a talent that's coming into the industry, is having strong financial acumen. I think COVID has taught us as individuals and as organizations that having strong financial acumen is the difference between surviving or facing hardship. And as an organization, that really has, I guess, proven between the good organizations with good CFOs and good finance teams than the ones that possibly haven't been able to manage their financials as well as others. And I think definitely post-COVID, there's going to be more emphasis on individuals and organizations with strong financial acumen. So relevant skills for all employees, not just back office. So this is an area that I'm saying to new graduates, fresh graduates, but even organizations that's looking for their staff is looking for individuals that are somewhat financially savvy, because whether they're frontline staff or back of house, you want them to think about your business from a numbers perspective. Lastly, hiring forecasts, how and what we're seeing in terms of hiring recovery and when HR are looking to make hires. The majority we're speaking to are saying late 2021, so getting themselves ready for next year, which leads into most saying rehiring starting in 2022. So most HR practitioners that we're speaking to are forecasting towards the end of this year and then coming into 2022. So at least that's a little bit of positivity and something to look forward to. Although there is still nearly a quarter of HR folks out there that's still unsure what their hiring forecast is like, and I guess that's unsurprising given that COVID is still lingering at the moment. But a little bit of green, a little bit of light, I guess, at the end of that tunnel is that we're probably looking more towards time of rehiring than retrenchment at the moment. So with that, I'm going to hand this back to Paul. If that's my email address on there. If anyone in the audience has any questions, feel free to email and contact me privately as well. But happy to take any questions. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Andrew. As I said at the beginning of this webinar, if you have any questions for Andrew, feel free to drop it in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to read your question. So I want to go a bit about start with questions for myself. Just want to talk a bit more about work from home. A lot of people in this region, of course, there's still many lockdowns. There's a third wave here in Bangkok. So a question here I have for you is, how do you bridge and engage work from home staff, particularly new staff, on company culture? I mean, that's, there are companies still hiring now, but they're in lockdown. So what was your suggestions or advice for that?
Yeah, good question, Paul. It certainly is a challenge at the moment. And I think it boils down to communication. Whether they're new staff, whether they're existing staff, I think keeping your communication frequent but not lengthy is going to be important at the moment, because I think I think organizations and individuals are almost getting, ironically, here we are on Zoom, but they're getting Zoom fatigued, right? So I think it's important to keep your communication flexible and regular with your staff, but probably not lengthy communications. And also communications with staff shouldn't just be about work. So I think, I think don't miss out on the opportunity to just be social with existing employees and in particular new employees, because I think that's going to be an area that um, most people miss out on when they are working from home, is that social engagement with peers, with subordinates, with bosses, right? Because if you think about how workplace cultures and bonds are built, um, in pre-COVID days, if a colleague, if a staff member has a bad day at work or even a good day at work, it's not unusual for you to invite them for a drink or lunch or meal to either commiserate or to celebrate. So you're missing out on all those sort of activities that builds bonds and trust and loyalty with colleagues and employees. So whilst you're still working from home at the moment, still seek out those opportunities for social engagements, and not every interaction with your staff be about work.
So what do you encourage, like virtual happy hours or games and quizzes? I mean, those are, have you seen that been working effectively to get people to sort of, engage in that type of those type of activities online?
Yeah, look, I think so. But I don't necessarily think you should make them mandatory either, because then it becomes another chore to speak of. Because as I said, a lot of the times is that spontaneous or spontaneity when it comes to an office environment. You have a bad day, you have a good day, you have a drink. So if you're a leader, if you're a boss, um, look for those sort of opportunities to engage with your colleagues, with your employees, um, whether it's just a quick FaceTime, quick phone call, some light-hearted group chats. But yeah, if there's an opportunity for a bit more bonding, whether it's games or just having a Zoom drink, happy hour, feel free to come. Don't come. Just have that as an open environment for people to drop in and drop out. I think that at least would be a start.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, I guess. Everyone's just trying to figure out the way through this current pandemic. And then, in terms of, as you mentioned, there's some companies that have decided, hey, we're gonna completely do work from home. I mean, I know some companies that have completely just do virtual, virtual office. They don't actually have an office anymore. But what kind of other complications do you see besides, company culture? I mean, I could imagine taxes or health insurance could be issues. I mean, are there other issues that maybe people haven't considered if they're thinking about, closing down the office and working virtually, that they should be aware of?
Well, very, very good question, Paul. And this is where, um, so you're right. So occupational health and safety, from an insurance point of view, is something that I know HR over the last year or so have looked into, um, because workplace injuries are covered by workplace insurance. So as a small business, that's something that you should check with your business insurance, how your employees are covered for workplace injuries. So yeah, so that's certainly one thing, and I guess expenses. So what's your new policy, or what's your policy going to be like for employees when it comes to expenses? So those sort of like little things, I think, still needs to be ironed out. So whilst you're obviously offsetting big office expenses, but I think it's the little things that ultimately could potentially still add up for an organization.
And talking about insurance, I guess when I assume, insurance now, travel insurance will be a lot higher for businesses going forward. So that you think that will then cut down the amount of travel, I guess people are saying that probably see 25% reduction of business travel. Would that be one of the causes, or is it just the safety, or cheaper just to do on Zoom? What's your thoughts on that?
Um, I don't know if insurance will necessarily play a huge role per se, because I'm starting to see travel insurance, have COVID as the cover anyway, and I know that because I actually just took out an annual travel insurance, and it covers COVID and wasn't that much more than what my previous travel insurance policy was. Um, but I think my opinion on business travel will be that I think we will eventually, um, I think it will eventually pick back up. I think um, once COVID is over, I know a lot of people were saying that business travel may be reduced, and Zoom and everything else, but I think that's all going to be dependent on how quickly businesses recover, and um, and how well they recover as well. Because I think most people have short memories, um, and travel. You've got to keep in mind, for business travel, and travel is a perk, is a workplace perk. So most employees actually want that as part of their jobs as well. And you simply, I guess, have to ask the CEO or CFO of an organization how much travel that they plan to cut down themselves personally, and or at all, or completely. And I fail to have any CEOs or CFOs tell me that they are going to completely stop traveling, even post COVID. So that's going to trickle down to officers and managers and supervisors. And I think ultimately, once COVID is well behind us, business travel will be where it was, and higher, to be honest.
Right. And then you talked a little bit about sort of how some of the young students they've shifted from travel and tourism to other sectors, right? Then how does the industry as a whole then kind of reassure them and bring them back and keep them like we're going to lose you're going to have a sort of a brain drain, right? I mean, some of the best people go to the best jobs outside of the sector. What would your advice for that be to sort of keep them here, keep them engaged, or make them come back once this is all over?
That's a tough one, Paul, because as I said, we've lost 2 years of graduates, coming to potentially three. Um, and if they've started another industry, it's going to be how do we how do we make our industry attractive enough for them to come back. Now, the good news on that is, millennials and the younger workforce are a little bit more transient in how they choose careers nowadays. So I'm confident to say that if they went into another sector, um, they are fluid enough to go back to potentially their first passion, and that's probably why they've done a hospitality degree, or travel diploma, or whatever that may be, for us to collectively um, entice them back. And I think this is probably where the roles of associations and governments bodies, whether it's PATA, TSAB, STB, will come in and make it attractive for the young graduates to come back into the industry. Because I think post COVID, there's going to be a lot of jobs, openings, that's going to be created. So we're going to need those individuals, but at the same time, I think for those individuals, there's going to be a lot of job opportunities in this sector.
But if you said there's a lot of job opportunities, it's gonna be pretty competitive, right? So I mean, as a business owner, you're gonna have to probably incentivize or increase sort of maybe your salaries for your employees to keep them. I mean, is that something that you foresee happening uh, post COVID? You said like when it opens up, there'll be sort of an immediate demand for work. Do you think that may be a problem?
Salary has been talked about in our industry, even pre COVID. Um, So I think it's pretty clear, and it's something that we have recognized for years now, that you know what, the travel and tourism sector hasn't competed or paid as well as the financial sector or the insurance industry or whatever it may be. But we still somehow have our appeal, and we still somehow have that lure for young people to come into the industry. Research also tells me that salary, whilst is important, um, isn't isn't one of the highest considerations for people when it comes to job selections or career selections. So, look, I think you know we've acknowledged the salary part. I think let's focus on other areas of why the tourism industry is appealing. And there's many reasons why the tourism industry is appealing, particularly for young people. And I think that's probably the area we should just stay focused on, because that's how we've been appealing and attracting young people to come into the industry. It's just that unfortunately, because of COVID, the last 2 or 3 years, we haven't been able to actually, you know, have those jobs for the graduates.
We're about to run out of time, but if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. I got one question, last question, if there's no other questions here. What would you say to sort of the young graduates now then that are, you know, or that either just have just finished school or are about to finish school? What do you have any advice for them? You know, because I know that a lot of them are now just, you know, they're in a state of shock. They plan a career. I'm going to go into the hotel industry. I'm going to go into airlines. What what kind of words of advice can you give to them?
Hey, Paul, I'm in a state of shock myself. I think we all are. Um, Look, I think this is going to teach all of us, and not just the graduates, you know, resilience and perseverance. So for the young graduates, you know, for obviously for the moment, do what you need to get through this period, and to survive. Keep learning. If it means outside of the industry, then you know it is what it is. But know that I think that the tourism sector will welcome you back with open arms. There will be opportunities to come. So it's just been delayed. You know, your journey in the tourism sector has been delayed for 2 or 3 years, perhaps. But whatever skill that you pick up from other sectors is going to be as important or even more useful for you when you do actually transition back into the tourism industry.
All right, thank you very much. We did get a question here, but the question I guess is a very simple one. Can the delegates get the copies of your slides?
Yes, not a problem.
All right, Andrew, I'll send that over to you at the just in the next few days, once this is all over. So I think we've scheduled from 3 to 3:45. We're just about at the 3:45 mark. Uh, and with that, thank you so much, Andrew. If you have any questions for Andrew, feel free to send to me, and I can pass them on to him as well. I'll send the slides out to everybody who's attended today. Thank you so much, Andrew. I'll let you leave and go about the rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Parther. Thanks, Liz, in the background there somewhere.
She's here. I'm sure you'll talk to her afterwards. All right, take care. I'll just do a quick
Bye.
wrap.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, I might hear my kids in my background. But yes, thank you once again to Andrew Chan. He's the founder and CEO of ACI HR Solutions. Feel free to check out their company on their websites. If you enjoyed today's webinar, we do have a couple more webinars coming up, so I just want to make you aware of them. So, this Thursday, we will be with our good friends at MasterCard, rethinking technology and cyber risk. So, this is free for PATA members. For non-members, chapter members, and youth, there is a small fee. Information, this starts on Thursday at 3 p.m. That is 3 p.m. Bangkok time. So, if you want to join, please register today. We also, next week on September 25th, we have our virtual Rural Tourism and Sustainable Development Conference. This is from 3 to 6 p.m. This time is in China time, so it's GMT plus 8. So that is 1 hour ahead of Bangkok. It's a fantastic program, so feel free to register now. And next month, on October 20th to 22nd, we have our virtual Pod of Wellness and Luxury Travel Conference and Mart. This is a one-day conference and a one-day mart. So if you're in wellness and luxury space, feel free to register today as either a buyer or a seller, or register today as a conference delegate. All information is on our website, and you can see that right here. It's www.pada.org. As I said, if you have more questions about today's webinar, feel free to email me at paul@pada.org. If you have any questions about our webinars that I've just showed you or events, you can also email me as well. Happy to answer any questions you might have. And with that, once again, thank you to Andrew for a fantastic presentation. Thank you to, as always, to our members, our members, our partners, our life members, our chapter members for the continued support. And thank you to all of you for joining us today. Take care, stay safe, and I'll see you on Thursday.